So in this section of videos, I'm going to deal with placement of pigments. I mean, pigments are very often used, especially in occasion related makeup. So bridals, or generally they're also used to mix up and use as highlighters as well in various fashion shoots. Like I said, in occasion makeup mainly. The reason they're called just pigments is they're not very different from eyeshadows. They are eyeshadows actually. It's just that they're so finely milled. The powder is milled to this really soft, fine consistency, and it's not held together like an eyeshadow is. So it tends to be loose and difficult to maintain and contain within a certain area. And I know that a lot of people do have trouble handling pigments. Having said that, it's not really difficult to handle pigments if you know exactly where to place them, and also you have a method to how you place them. I'm going to show you both. Just to aid you in the use of pigments in the future, there's a few ways, and I want to mention this before I get on with the video, because once I get with the makeup started, then I kind of lose myself in that. But here's a few things I want you to know. There's several things called that aid the use of pigments in a makeup, all right? Now, if you wanted to make a pigment more long lasting or waterproof, so to speak, or you want to make a pigment into an eyeliner, or you want to create a liquid version of that pigment makeup, then you do get several products like this. This is a mixing medium. Mixing medium comes in from several brands have different formulations for mixing mediums. They're alcohol based, some are water based, gel based. So you'll find several versions of the mixing medium. What you can do with this is you can mix your pigment with this to create liners, to make it liquids, to make it creamy, to make it glossy. You can even mix your pigments with clear gloss. You can mix it with your foundations to create a skin sheen. Obviously, it depends on the color that you're using. So do invest at least in one of these mixing mediums from a brand of your choice, because then you can play around and create textures. So if you wanted to paint flowers on a person's face, for example, with pigments, you can mix colors with the mixing medium. All right. Another way, I don't want to forget to mention this. Also, when you mix pigments with a liquid, the transfer becomes different. So the payoff, the color payoff, is very different from when you use it just by itself. What I mean by that is when you use a pigment wet, the color is more intense, and when you use it dry or by itself, it's more sheer. Of course, you can build up by layering, but having said that, if you want it in one shot, making it slightly damp or wet it's a way to go. Another way of using a pigment is your regular face mists that you get, such as a MAC Fix Plus. There are several brands that have spraying fixes, and you just need to spray very lightly, not make your brush wet. It should only be damp. Once you do that and you pick up a pigment with the wet brush, it tends to have a different payoff. Again, it's a very intense payoff versus when you use it dry. So that's another way to use pigments. Like I said earlier, you can also mix it with your glosses, and you can put it on the lips, or you can put it on the eyes. So there's several ways to apply pigments. Pigments also, when you use them dry, they do tend to have a fallout. They will fall all over your cheeks. So there's ways to maintain that too. There's ways to control that by using a primer. So you can put it directly on the primer so it stays put. So there's several things, and I'm going to show you as I go how to use a pigment and how to place a pigment so it looks pretty in your makeup. You can't just take a pigment and wash it all over your face, because then it'll just give you one overlit, rounded, flat effect. You need to be able to place it in a way that it flatters your makeup, flatters the feature, and brings your makeup together in the most beautiful way. I'm going to get started. I'm keeping the colors fairly basic. Let's try Rust. She has a beautiful complexion, and a rust or orange warm brown tones will work really well on her. So I'm going to show you how you can place pigments to achieve beautiful light effects on the makeup. And we're focusing only on the eyes right now, and as we progress through further lessons, we'll show you how to mix pigment for other uses. Alright, so I'm going to get started by doing a basic eyeshadow in the most basic, contouring on the eyes. Using a blending brush, I'm using another basic palette which kind of covers, some of the browns, warm browns that I want to use for this look. I'm going to be mixing largely between these two, so I'm going to start straight away. A rust and a sandal. Just clean up lines if there is any. I've already lightly primed her eyes with foundation and powder. So I'm just going to get started. I'm literally just washing in the shape of her crease, going from one corner to the other corner. What I'm really doing is creating a crease above her crease, very softly blending it. So why I'm doing this is to create a shadow that looks quite natural. Of course, you can do it in any color. I'm sticking with rusty brown, really. And if you notice, I'm not touching the center of her eye right now. I'm keeping the center as bare as possible because that's where I'm going to place my pigment. I'll explain why. For now, I'm just rolling the color across from one end of the crease to the other end of the crease, literally wrapping up the eyelid in a matte powder. Why matte? Because I'm creating contours, and pigments are normally very reflective. Not always, there are matte pigments as well, but I'm using a reflective pigment and I want it obviously to be more effective in this makeup. And obviously reflective products are most effective when they're wrapped up in mattes. So it's like a marriage between the two. Just on a basic corner to corner wash. You don't have to be too precise here because it's going to be largely smudged out and very, very soft. Again, it's a very basic way of applying a pigment. I'm showing you the very basics right now. Keeping the center fairly bare, keeping the brow bone bare as well. You can make it as intense as you choose. I'm actually going to keep it quite soft. Just building up the rust. So on both the eyes, I'm going to show you two different effects of the pigment, and then I'm going to balance it out to create one look. But for now, I need you to understand why I'm putting a matte shadow. Like I said, I'm using a matte so I can wrap the reflective shadow and make it very effective in makeup. And the pigment placement then makes sense because what it'll do is it'll literally catch the light and it won't spread across the face or the eye. Of course, you can build this up to any kind of finish you want. You want this to be a smoky eye, it can. If you'd like it to be very deeply coral, you can. I'm just keeping it largely, I'm not going to take it too far out. Keeping it very, very neutral. So if you notice, I'm leaving the center of the eyelid fairly bare, So what I'm creating right now is just the skeleton of this look, right? The pigment is going to be the star and I want that to show through. So I've created what is just like a base for an eyeshadow. I'm not going to fuss too much about this look. This is only to do with placement and how you may use pigments dry or wet, because that will give you an idea of how you may use them in your own application. So not much fuss around here. What I've done is literally created a wrap. I've wrapped her crease and the inside and the outside of her eyes in a very like a deep contour. Matte, because the reflective pigment will stand out against it and create a good effect. So just that. Now I'm going to show you how to place the pigment, but before that, as we all know, pigments are very pesky and they tend to fall. So I do want to dust on a very thin layer of powder underneath her eyes to catch the fall, because this can be quite a mess to clear. Don't worry about how it looks, because once you dust it off, it's all going to look wonderful. So for now, this is just safeguarding the rest of your makeup. So another option is you can do your base after the eye makeup as well, but in this case it's just purely demonstrative, so I've done her base already. I'm just putting on the sides of the nose. It's funny how pigments do find a way to travel everywhere, so I'm just going to do that too. I don't want the makeup getting ruined. It's very, very tough to clear up. Sometimes it needs complete removal to clear up pigment spill on the face, and glitter too, so we just want to watch what we're doing. So I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. In this case, you're literally making the brush damp. It shouldn't be wet, so when you apply, you shouldn't be able to really, water shouldn't drip from, so water shouldn't drip, it should just literally have enough to tack. Now pigment pots normally do this. Your cap is normally filled with color, so you don't need more than that. Take a good dab with a wet brush on the flat side, very important, not on the sharp side, flat side, because all you're doing is literally placing the pigment where you want. You're not meddling with the procedure at all. So I've left this bare spot free, right? Now what I'm going to do is take my brush and literally place my pigment on the area that I've left free of the eyeshadow. Now what this will do, if you notice already, without me doing anything, could you open your eyes please? I've literally placed it on her eyeball. So you'll see the effect of it is just catching light where the light naturally falls on the eyes. Alright, so that's what you want. Literally placing this in the center of her eyes, and this is not the only placement. You can start playing around depending on your mood, depending on the look you're aiming for. So I'm just going to take a blending brush, and I will not add any pigment on this. Literally blending off the edges, the seams. I like to call these the seams. So you don't see where I've begun and finished with the pigment. Just kind of blend off that, and if you see the need for adding more intensity around it, you could by just going in with the rust. And taking it along the seams. I'm just kind of wrapping it up neatly so you don't see the edges too much. So what I've done here is I've literally placed the pigment where it looks most effective in this makeup. So I'm going to reapply the pigment just smack here in the middle, very close to the lash line, if you can catch that. Can you see it? So what I'm doing is I'm just maximizing the effect of this pigment. Open. So you'll be able to see that the placement looks very, very pretty. It looks very precise, and it's not hogging up the entire eye and making a mush of your eye makeup. Now, if you had to use the pigment dry by itself and didn't want to have that much intensity, you can do that too. There's two ways of doing that. You can use it straight off on the eyelids and you'll get a fairly soft base. I'll show you that. So I'm dipping straight with the new brush into the pigment. Now in this you won't have the same effect as that, it'll be much lighter. So this is using it dry. The pigment goes on differently. It doesn't kind of have that sharp intensity. Also, if you notice, there will be a significant amount of fallout. Now this is the danger with having to use it dry. Although I wouldn't say it's not a good way to apply it, you could. But having said that, you could have put a primer or something there so it holds on and this fall doesn't happen. But this is to show you what happens when you use it dry. In this case, if you're planning to use it dry, what you can do is do your base after your eye makeup. That's a fabulous way to do it. I'm just going to fix that. I'll kind of add another layer of the pigment so we get an equal amount on. If you can see, that is the wet application. It's really stronger. It's more pronounced. I'm just going to blend off the seams. With pigments, be careful how you place them and try and place them very precisely, because if I use the pigment right across and I blended it, it tends to dull the rest of your makeup because it's so strong. It's not held together by anything. See, what I'm doing here is just deepening again and finishing it off. So I'm literally kind of wrapping that up again and finishing. So another way of using the pigment is, again, you can make it wet slightly. Take a dab of the pigment with your pencil brush, just at the very corner. And this is a very popular highlight. It really, really does wonders for the eye makeup. You can just place the pigment in the corner on the tear duct. This immediately opens your eyes up and brightens the eye as well. All reflective products can be placed in a manner that really works with the makeup. Just literally to brighten up the dark inner corners of the eye. Just to wrap that up, I'm going to use the same brush, the rust eyeshadow, to tie that in. So I'm just wrapping it up so it all looks pretty and right. Alright, so here I'm just finishing up so it all looks well tied in and good together. Close your eyes. And just remember that when you're, this is not the only way in which you can use pigments. There's a million ways in which you can use them to spectacular effect. I'm just showing you the basic placement of reflective pigments. They're best placed where the light naturally catches the feature that you're applying the pigment on. And obviously another use of pigments is the color payoff is really strong. It's a big hit of drama. So you want to understand the uses of the product before you even attempt using them. So you know what to do with it. You know that it will create the best kind of effect that you can achieve in a makeup. I'm just deepening the rust a bit to give the contrast more dynamic. Well, I'm not fussing so much. This has more to do with the placement than anything else. I'm going to quickly wrap that up. So while on the subject of catching light, I do want to mention this as well. You can use reflective products, like I said, to catch highlights on a feature. Now, just to demonstrate that, since we are on the topic as well, I'm going to use a lighter, like a creamy matte white, and it doesn't have to be matte. You can use them in reflective colors as well. Another fabulous way to catch light or just reiterate where the light naturally falls on your makeup is the brow bone. It's a fabulous place to add a light color. So what you're doing two things. First of all, you're clearing up this area, cleaning it up. Secondly, it casts a beautiful light on the rest of your makeup and creates a contrast that's very flattering in eye makeup. So again, these are the natural areas of the eyes where light falls, and you want to work those areas just as you would work the crease for a contour. And always finish up a makeup by blending. You should never leave a product unattended to in a makeup. I really like tying it all together. And just for a little added intensity, I'm going to line her eyes and finish off with a mascara. So you can see the effect of something so simple. I've literally used two eyeshadows and a pigment to create this kind of an effect. Look up. Just using a soft brown to finish up. I don't want the colors, I don't want anything but the pigment to jump from this look. Take a Q-tip, clean up, open your eyes please. Clean the corners so you have everything bright and clean. Now, I'm going to just dust off what we have underneath. We don't want that powder, and this side is going to be quite difficult because, like I said, it was a dry powder. So you don't want to press and seal the fate of this pigment. You literally want to pick it up. If you did that, it'll literally lift off the skin and you'll be able to see it. Now if I pressed my brush, if you notice, that pigment stays right and it settles into the skin. You don't want that. So let me just flick off. Just flick it off very lightly. Use a very light hand, and you can see how far away I'm holding my brush. If I hold it here, you have more control. Therefore, the deposit of the product will be very heavy. If you hold it away, your hand gets lighter. It's forced to get lighter. The brush literally moves like a sweep. So understand how you use your brushes. Now, if you see on this side, I've just literally flicked off the fall. There was far less fall than on this side. Literally just cleaning that up. So I'm just going to finish that off with mascara so you can see that a simple application of pigment can still be very effective. And this is just at the very beginning of your ability to play with pigments. There's so many things, there's so many more things coming up. So yeah, just learn about the importance of placement of a product and how to use your brushes, maximize the use of what you have, make the most of everything you have to create excellent effects in makeup. So that's just clean. I'm just going to do a big lashing of mascara on that and we're good to go. If you notice on the eyelashes, in applications like this where you use pigments, there will be a heavy fall on the lashes. Now this will happen when you use light eyeshadows, pigments, glitter, reflective eyeshadows. Now there's one way to keep it clean. You can go back to my mascara video to check it out, but at the very basics of learning how to use mascara, you will know that you can sweep a product away by going in from the top. And if you notice, the pigment would have lifted off with that application. So this is a fabulous way to clean up after yourself after a pigment application too. I'm not doing a liner here because I want the pigment to stand out as the star of this makeup. So I'm just kind of wrapping that up so you can take a good look at the basic effects of a pigment. Just add your finishing touches wherever you feel the need to deepen, darken, open your eyes. And there you have it. I'm not interfered with a liner and put on something more excessive. I just want you to see how beautiful a pigment looks when it's applied to precision, with precision and not layered and layered all over the eye. And because cleaning up a pigment which is not in its place, in its rightful place, can be a very difficult makeup job to do. So this is largely your very, very basic use of pigments on the eyes. There'll be much more later.